I typically try to split up my week. And so the first couple of days of the week, I do usually Monday and Tuesday, I go and
Big part of why I think there's a great buying opportunity for furniture on local marketplaces is there's a convenience aspect. A lot of times people are not.
I ended up with a lot of pieces that I didn't even have to pay for, which was amazing. But also, if you take too many, then you have a whole garage full of things. So you kind of have to start being a little particular about, what you take.
When we think about how you make money on a flip, I think it comes down to two things.
If we could just look for that quality furniture and really take care of it. And I'm not against painting furniture. There's a lot of people who are anti-painting, but I think.
Welcome to another episode of the Couch Pod. Today I'm joined by Autumn Hessman, the visionary behind Prayed Over Pieces on Instagram and the Flipper's Guide on YouTube. We'll be sure to insert links in the description below so you can check her out. But she is an expert at finding low budget items and then sprucing them up to make them look very high end, give it that old money feel. And ultimately, she's here to help you get more leverage on thrifted finds. So Autumn, thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
So is this your first podcast? I'm curious.
I have done one before, but it was probably a year or two ago.
Okay, cool. And how was your experience with that first pod?
It was good. It was more on the business side. So it was more about how I started my business and ran it and less about like what I do with my business.
Absolutely. And I've done at this point close to 100 podcasts. I want to say like 70, 80 podcasts at this point. I remember the first time I got on a pod, I was almost like nervously speaking. But once you get that first one out of the way, I think you're going to be pretty good on this one. I would actually like to deep dive into how you got started with the business and just kind of understanding the background a little bit more. So yeah, how did you jump into the content creation and the thrifting and all that?
So I didn't really plan on doing content creation at all. I am also a speech pathologist. And so I was working as a speech pathologist. I was working in the schools, and my husband was working as a teacher and a coach, and we weren't making a whole lot of money. So I was just kind of like, let's see if I can figure out a way to help supplement our income. And I had seen a few people that were, just refinishing furniture, like in local booths and things like that. And I just have always loved arts and crafts and creativity. And so I just really started with a piece of furniture that I had bought at a thrift store. I've always loved thrifting, and refinished it. And that's kind of how it started. And then in order to sell the pieces, I was like, I think the best way is to be able to share them online. And so it grew, and I had a ton of people wanting pieces and people wanting me to paint their personal pieces. And so I just continued to grow and continued to put it out there online. And Reels started. And so I started making videos, and then finally started getting on YouTube and sharing all sorts of things. So it's just kind of grown and come from there.
Cool. And you started out mainly with furniture, but now I see you're getting into all kinds of DIY projects. What sparked the motivation to, dive into other areas of flipping?
So we moved, and we were living in a city that had over 100,000 people, and we moved kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And so my market dropped, and the biggest city to us is at least 40 to 45 minutes away. And so I kind of was just like, oh my goodness, I don't have anywhere to sell these furniture pieces. People don't want to drive 45 minutes, and so I really kind of decreased my size of things I was getting because I was starting to have lots of pieces of furniture at my home. And I decided I love doing this. And so I'm going to start looking for smaller pieces and showing people online how they can use them for their home. It really just kind of transformed to that.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue into our next topic because, obviously on the Couch Pod, we have a lot of couch flippers, furniture flippers of all kinds, really. And one of the major limitations of starting up a couch flipping business or furniture flipping business is space. These are big, bulky items. You typically have to get a storage unit. You're probably at least getting a trailer, if not a truck. You want to be efficient at picking up furniture. But there are all these other opportunities to flip smaller items within the context of your home and still make a decent living. And what started out as a side hustle for you is kind of, I would imagine, transformed your life to date. And that opportunity probably exists for a lot of people. So how do you divide your time nowadays? Like, how is it like, what percentage of time is spent like flipping versus thrifting versus creating content? Yeah.
So I typically try to split up my week. And so the first couple of days of the week, I do usually Monday and Tuesday, I go and look for the thrifts and things like that. And then middle of the week, sometimes it'll just be like Monday where I go thrift. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, I do the actual flipping. And then I try to edit my videos because I've been doing the YouTube thing on Thursday and Friday and have it out by Saturday. So it's a process, but
It's a busy, quite a busy schedule. Yeah. So speaking of thrifting, what kind of items are you gravitating towards nowadays, and where are you finding them?
so I am a lot of times going to local thrift stores, which is where I've found that you can find a lot more reasonable prices. I also go to places like Goodwill. Whenever I lived in a city, I went to garage sales, places like that, and the Salvation Army kind of store. And I would just kind of look for items that I thought would be made of real products. So, like if it was something that was real wood or something that was made of brass or copper or just a high end kind of look, then that's kind of what I went for.
I see. So mostly like thrift stores and things of that nature. Do you ever find products on like local marketplaces?
I have done that usually with my furniture. I did a lot of Facebook Marketplace. With the smaller items, I tend to go more to the stores and shops because they have so many of those that the prices are usually a little bit more reasonable. But sometimes on Marketplace, with the brass pieces or things like that, people already know how much they're worth, and so they're putting them up a little bit higher.
That makes total sense. So, like, a big part of why I think there's a great buying opportunity for furniture on local marketplaces is there's a convenience aspect. A lot of times, people are not necessarily trying to recoup the maximum value for a couch or a dresser. They're just moving and they want to get rid of it, right? And like, it's almost like a fire sale. And so, the fact that they're moving or some life situation is coming up is your buying opportunity. Now you have a great way to get some leverage on that item immediately, right out of the gate, just for buying the right thing.
With furniture, I had a lot of people who would just call me and say, I don't want this anymore. Do you want it? Or it was given to me because my grandmother, they are clearing out her house or, something like that. And so I ended up with a lot of pieces that I didn't even have to pay for, which was amazing. But also, if you take too many, then you have a whole garage full of things. So you kind of have to start being a little particular about, what you take.
I have a mastermind community of flippers that I work with on a weekly basis. And obviously, I've done a bunch of these podcasts. When we think about how you make money on a flip, I think it comes down to two things. The first is you're providing a value added service. So you're taking an object and you're transforming it in some way, or you're cleaning it, or you're moving it from one location to another. And all of these like components of labor have value, and you could even hire out that labor in some cases. So you could hire someone to do a painting, you could hire someone to go pick up an item. The second part, and I think the more important part, maybe underappreciated in a flip, is just making money on the buy. So it's recognizing value in an item, maybe within its current distribution channel, and understanding if you took it to another market, or if you listed it like in a different state, or if you listed it on a different marketplace, that you could extract more value. And that's really where you're going to get better leverage on your time.
Hey, really quick before the podcast, did you know Ivy Flip has created the best couch flipping app in the world? With our newest update, we have the fastest marketplace search times. This means you'll get to listings way before your competition. With Ivy Flip by your side, you can dominate your market. Not to mention, we also help with cross-listing and inventory management. If you're serious about your couch flipping business, you need this app. Try the app today and get a free trial. Just search Ivy Flip in the Google Play Store or iOS App Store, or click the link in the description now.
Yes. For me, it's more of like knowing what are the current interior design styles and what is going to be up and coming in the new year. And so if I can provide that to people, that's one thing that I do well in. And I have friends who are like, I have no idea. That is not my forte. So we will just let you tell us, and we would love you to provide that for us. I'm not good at cooking, so I let them tell me, how to do that. And so I understand kind of just finding your space and then being able to provide that to other people.
Absolutely. And I totally get the vibe that you are a tastemaker of sorts. And for me, like you can kind of see me here. I'm just in my plain brown t-shirt, no accessories. Like I keep it pretty simple. But and you know, for my main audience, couch flippers, mostly men, right? And a lot of them couldn't tell you anything about interior design, what's trending. And I think it is very helpful to have a woman's point of view or just someone with, you know, more of a fashion and interior design sense coming into the mix and sharing what they think is trending because you know, even if it's a man who's selling the couch, the person who's making the decision about what to bring into the home oftentimes is a woman, and they're going to have particular senses of style. So what do you see right now that is trending and that viewers should be on the lookout for?
I think very classic looks, lots of real wood, stone. Everybody's not very happy about it, but beige is coming back. So just finding all those looks that are like bringing in nature into your home. There was a time where it was like lots of dramatic colors and a lot of bright, heavy colors, like the moody colors. And those are still in, but it's more chilled out now. So just kind of finding your own style too is really important. You know, there's anything classic is gonna last. So anything that is the classic look will be good to go.
Absolutely. Would you say almost like more natural materials, almost like eco chic?
Yes, yeah, the wood beams, those kind of things. So, and everybody loves to mix those woods and metals right now, and so like all of those brass pieces are really beautiful mixed with those wood colors.
And maybe even more of like a minimalist vibe then.
Yeah, kind of an in between. For a while, it was very minimalist where everybody went all white and just very plain. And now it's kind of blending in, you know, your style with a minimalist look too.
Do you think there's a big difference between markets? So you're in Southeast Texas right now, and your market, your audience is going to be a little bit different than maybe someone living in an apartment in New York. How much should a flipper be thinking about their regional market when making these decisions?
Definitely, there is a difference. So there's a difference in the prices that you can get on, you know, some of those products, but also just what styles are in. So in the bigger cities, you're going to have the more modern looks and things like that. And, you know, more in the outer areas, there's still, you know, like our Texas area, there's a lot of areas where they like the rustic look and they like the Western look, which isn't quite my style, but I know that I can find pieces like that and be able to provide it to people who really love that.
You said something really interesting earlier, which is it's important to find your own style. I think this is an elevated way of thinking about being a flipper and maybe building a brand. So if you're a flipper, most of the time you're thinking on a transaction level, on an item level. Does this item have value? Like I can buy it for 10, I can sell it for 100. But over time, if you flip a lot of items, you become known in your market for having a certain kind of product and style. So give me some context for what led you to say that and the thought process there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of for me. After doing this for a while, I kind of felt that way with my furniture. I was doing furniture flips and I had sometimes I would be doing flips for people. They would bring me their furniture and they would want a certain style. And I was just like, that is not really me. I don't mind doing it, but it's not me. And so I kind of started just being choosier about what I would do and what I would create and the looks that I made. And it just, people would know what pieces were coming from me because they had a specific kind of look.
And how would you define your current aesthetic and what you're known for then?
I just like more of like the old money kind of look, the high end look, and really classic. You know, anything that if you think of like a Ralph Lauren kind of look where it's just very classic and it's gonna last for a long time and it's gonna stand the test of time. That's the kind of look that I love because it just fits with so many people and their styles.
Absolutely. And, you know, not only are those things timeless, so you can always wear them or have them in your home and it's going to look appropriate and discerning. Sometimes, like, the cycle trends back very hard towards these things. And I think we're in one of those cycles.
Yeah, I do too. And I think trends can be really tricky because people love them, but they're so fast and they come in and out so quick. And so if you're quick to jump on some of those really dramatic trends, then you're going to be like having to redo your home or redo, the things that you've done in your home over and over again. So the classic is always the way to go.
I was kind of surprised when I was looking through like some of our old photo books that we had at the house. My parents were actually quite fashionable, like, and I didn't recognize it when I was growing up, but like as I kind of look through like the different outfits that they had, there's like one picture that comes to mind specifically, like my dad in an orange polo and like these round polo shirt and like these round sunglasses and some khaki shorts and boat shoes, and it like that was very on point or on trend for fashion today. And I was like, actually, parents are kind of cool back in the day.
It cycles back. I'll see things. My mom will go with me sometimes thrifting, and I'll see things and she'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that's what your grandma would have loved," So it's funny how the trends cycle back, and you can kind of get back to those basics.
So a big part of your channel, especially with the Flippers Guide, is taking good base material. So, you still have to be selective about what you're buying and identifying those right arbitrage opportunities. But there's a transformation that occurs to these pieces when they're in your hands. So could you give us a breakdown of this basic process of taking an item and giving it that old money look and feel?
It kind of just depends on, what it is that I find. But like even this week, I found 6 dining chairs and they were scraped up and scratched, but they had beautiful caning on the back and they are a mid-century modern. I actually got them for $5, all of them, which was crazy. And I just was in shock. But what I'm going to do is just go in, add some stain, really clean them up, maybe even recover the seats and just give them more of a updated style. And it won't be too much work, but it will bring such a great transformation. And if I was to sell those, I would be able to make 10 times what I bought them for. No, way more than 10 times actually, since they were only $5.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 10 times only $50. So
I know, I was like, nope, nope.
So, do you have a preference for the kinds of items that you're picking up nowadays to do the makeover and renovation process with now?
Yes, so whenever I first started, I would just take any pieces and just try to flip them. And, the furniture pieces, there's some that are made of just laminate plastic. They are the processed pressed wood and they are not good. And so I would try to sand them down and end up, burning through it or just ruining the piece. And it was just not even worth it. And so, what I always try to do whenever I go to a store is just look for a high quality item that has been overlooked or, just needs just a little bit of work to be able to bring back that quality. So, there's a lot of beautiful lamps that I've found that are made of glass that are just very vintage and they just are dirty and gross. And so if you're willing to clean them up and add a beautiful cover or, a shade on them, then they're going to just make a really good profit for you.
Not only do we live in a world of fast fashion and just fast consumerism in general, it has found its way into the world of furniture as well.
Yes. Yes.
And you just want the same quality that you would have 40, 50 years ago if you're buying a dresser, for example, compared to IKEA, Wayfair.
Yep. It's sad. And I hate, that certain things are getting thrown in the dumps. It just is crazy how much furniture goes into the dumps. But if we could just look for that quality furniture and really take care of it. And I'm not against painting furniture. There's a lot of people who are anti-painting, but I think if you have the ability to bring out the quality of the furniture with paint, and I do a lot of wood and paint looks. And so if you can kind of cover up those areas that people really, really damaged or repair them in a way that it can be used, then whatever works in your home is beautiful.
So you've done a lot of flips at this point, and I know there's going to be someone out there watching this pod who wants to jump in. They're curious, they see the opportunity, but they don't know where to get started. What would you recommend for someone who is starting from zero that wants to get into what you're doing?
I say just try one or two pieces first. Don't go out and buy 50 things because you'll be overwhelmed. And so just really try one or two pieces. If they're wanting to do furniture, then go and try to find a really well-made piece. And then I started by selling mine on Facebook Marketplace, and that's how I grew. And then, also sold and shared on my social media. Lots of people use Etsy to sell their pieces, and it's a great place too. But I think just start small, start with a few, and then grow from there.
What do you think is a reasonable like sales or profit expectation for someone who wants to do this like part-time, 20 hours a week, maybe even less?
I think you just have to take into account your time and your products. And a lot of people do not take that into account. So they might refinish a piece and then make $500 on it. But if they spent $200 on the piece and then they bought paint and then they spent 15 hours on it, then they're actually losing money. And that's why we want those high quality pieces so that it won't take the time and take away from your profit. And so I think if I can double what I paid and not and include all of my products and prices and stuff, then I think I'm doing good.
So would you say like if you're flipping out of the comfort of your home, you're doing it part-time, that you could expect to make maybe 1,000 or so a week if you're doing it really right?
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of just depends on what product you're going for. For me, I supplement by making content, and so I get paid by Facebook to share videos, and I get paid by YouTube for sharing and teaching people how to do these things. And so that supplements my income too. And so that kind of helps. But yeah, I think especially if you are in a market where you can make that, then that's a great income.
Sometimes there are mistakes in any business that you need to make yourself in order to, like, you just have to go through it. But other times you can learn from the mistakes of someone who's done it before you. And maybe you could share with us one of the biggest flipping blunders that you've made in your career.
I went and put all of my furniture in a booth, a vintage booth, and that was whenever I had first gotten started. And I didn't go and look at the placement of where my booth would be. I just went and paid for it and was excited just to get out there and have a booth. And they had me upstairs. So I had to have friends and my husband help me carry furniture upstairs to be sold there. And then they did not really promote anyone at the store except the people who were in the very front who owned the store. So I just didn't do good. I didn't get educated on that shop and how it worked as much. And then even the upstairs didn't have air conditioning. And so people never wanted to go up there to look at the pieces. So I ended up losing money on that. And so you just have to be careful what you invest your money into. I ended up making way more money keeping my pieces at home and selling them out of my home and being able to have a tax break on, having a business in my home than putting them in that booth.
Renting out a space or maybe going to a consignment store or something like that, trying to sell your pieces through there. No, that's tough. I've actually had similar experiences. So I got started in my entrepreneurial career selling bacon jam. I mean, it's pretty popular in Texas nowadays.
I was about to say, I think we have some.
So, but like, back in 2012, 2013, it was kind of a new product in the market. And the way we distribute, so I worked with this company that kickstarted themselves, and they gave me a credit line of like 50 grand to go and like distribute this product at different events. And, I went to like wine festivals, beer festivals, did a Christmas village for an entire month. And it is no joke being a vendor at one of these events, especially seasonal. Like they come around once a year, and rain or shine, you have to get there. You have early set up. You have to be there on your feet the entire day. That event that you were at, like the vintage market, was it like a multi-day affair, or was it just one and done?
It was actually like a store. So it was a shop, and I would just be able to go and decorate my area and put my pieces. But I have done markets before, and they are a lot too. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And so, like, I guess what we're talking about is the difference between traditional retail distribution and building online distribution channels for yourself. And nowadays, you're definitely more in the online space. Like, you're not going into a physical store or anything like that. Would you recommend it for someone thinking about this?
I think it just depends on what your product is. Like if you have a place where you're going to get way more eyes on your items and you know that it's going to be great for sales, then that's great. I have friends who sell jewelry in boutiques and they sell well and they just pay a monthly fee to have their things in there. And so they've made good sales. But for me, for big items, transporting it and the process, and I was doing all of my own marketing and then paying someone else, to keep it there, it was just not worth the time for my pieces.
It does kind of feel like it can work, like going to a physical vintage market, flea market, or having a spot like some real estate within a furniture store. Definitely can work. So we're not going to wholesale.
I think with the markets, I've done like Christmas markets and things like that, and I used it more as a marketing and advertisement because you get lots of eyes there. You don't usually get a lot of sales because people do buy little small trinkety things, and so they're not there to usually buy the items that I have. But I was able to hand out my card and talk with people and get a lot of emails for my email list, things like that. So it worked in a way, and you can use it for different ways, but if you're expecting to make a lot of money, it's probably not going to be a big money maker.
And you have to think about, like, if you're planning on making profit at the event itself, what kinds of products are going to do well as people are moving through a crowded market with like lots of products available to buy, and probably not that they're not, walking around with a shopping cart either in most cases, right? It's just their personal items. So there are certain types of products that are more likely to do well in a vintage market, but it's more likely that it is an opportunity to showcase your brand, showcase your products, build a relationship with your community and people. I'm in agreement with you that digital distribution, digital showrooms are probably the way to go in 2025. It just feels more modern. And I think we've seen the success of this style of distribution firsthand. The thing I think is really cool is attention is the most valuable commodity in 2025. It's like the most important thing, right? And normally you'd have to pay tons of money for attention. Like you put up flyers, go to business networking events, pay for a spot at a vintage market, or do a TV ad, radio spot, pay for Google ads, Facebook ads. But we live in an unprecedented time where you can just take the item, go to a marketplace where these kinds of items are listed, and just put it up. And they'll connect you for free or for a commission to a highly relevant audience of buyers who are interested in exactly the items that you're selling. This kind of digital distribution, like it lets people get started in entrepreneurial journey with very little capital requirements. And this is kind of rare, right? Like if I were to start a restaurant, for example, think like just to get started, at least 100 grand. But like with flipping, we could get started with, I don't know, like $100, very little investment, right? Connected to the audience right away. So what marketplaces do you think are the best for flippers that are starting out, and where do you think the focus should be?
For me, I started really just doing like local, like Facebook Marketplace. So that was my big place of being able to sell. And when I started that, it had just started. So it was a big place where everybody was kind of going and looking. And so that is really the main place that I started. Other people do, Etsy and things like that. I think social media wise, like Instagram, you can share videos and things like that, but it's not really where you sell. And so you can get your items out there to be seen, but it's not really a great place to sell as much. For me, if you're going to actually have a business, I think it's important after you've kind of gotten established to have your own space. So I have a website. I'm in the middle of revamping it right now, so it's coming soon. But just having your own space to put your items is great. That way, if anything ever happens and you get banned from Facebook, it's great to have your own website. And there's lots of places where I started with like a Wix site, and it was so easy to get started and to create my own website and share my items. And I sold pieces off of there as well.
I imagine your customers are not only coming to you on these marketplaces having seen your items for the first time, but maybe they know who you are, they kind of know your story, they follow along with your business. How important do you think it is to be active in creating content and putting out things on multiple channels?
Yeah, I think it is really important. It's a lot of work. People don't understand how much work it is to create all of the videos and the content if they don't do it. But I think it really just shows people the legitimacy of your business, and you're able to kind of just display your product in a way that other people may not notice. So if I'm showing where I got my piece and how I made it over, and here it is, then they will be able to see, oh my goodness, that's how she did it. But sometimes people, want to flip things and don't want to show how they did it. They just want to show the items. And so that's great too.
Like, I think there's something remarkably strategic about having your audience participate in the process of creation. And I find a lot of people that are more in the furniture artist space, let's say, like they're painting up furniture, etc. Like a good chunk of them make their money off of the flips, but they like another good percentage are also making money off the content. And not only that, the content helps with the flips.
Yeah, so I have gotten brand deals, for paint and for furniture and all sorts of different supplement the money that I'm spending to do these flips and DIYs. And so that's really nice. And that's a good way, if you're on these social media platforms, then you can definitely get those brand deals.
If you had to reflect on your journey to where you are today, and you could do one thing differently, or you could talk to old Autumn or younger Autumn, sorry, and give her some advice on what to do differently. What are some things that you would have changed?
I think one thing that people kind of get caught up in is numbers. And so people are so worried about, did I get this many views or this many likes, or I didn't get this many clicks. But really, if you are flipping to sell, all you need is that one person, And so if you are focusing on person that you're selling to and you are able to make money, then it doesn't really matter. Likes and clicks and numbers are really just vanity numbers. And so if you have your target audience, or you have the people that really love you and love your items, then I think that's what I would say just to focus on, because sometimes in content creation, it becomes exhausting trying to make sure that, you have so many views and things like that.
Right? That you're hitting all your metrics. But in a way, like the reason why a lot of people get into flipping or get into entrepreneurship, they want to do something for themselves. They want
Mhm.
freedom. They want an outlet for creativity.
Right.
And sometimes we get lost in the sauce, right? It can't always be about growth.
It takes the fun away.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. And there's so many couch flippers that I've talked to where I ask them, like, why do you like couch flipping? Why do you do what you do? It's like, well, oftentimes I was working at a warehouse, was making $15 an hour, and I flipped a single couch and I made my entire week's salary off of a single flip. So that's a big part of it. But another good chunk of people, they just enjoy the process. They like interacting with their customers, meeting new people. They like the process of cleaning a couch, driving. There's a
It is like, even with different DIYs I've done, I've made over vases and used clay and things like that. And it's just so relaxing, and just getting to use my creativity and my skills for that is really, really nice. And that was one thing, as a speech pathologist, I was doing a lot of paperwork and a lot of numbers and a lot of therapy, and doing a furniture makeover was so nice to be able to just sit and paint and relax. And that's actually, the name Prayed Over Pieces came from me getting to take the time to paint and just say a prayer over my family or over the person who was going to, be receiving the piece that I did. And so that was what I loved about it, to be able to just take that time and energy and just enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I love that, like, you're able to intersect your work and your faith and bring that into every item. And then that ultimately is like a part of you, a piece of you that makes it into someone else's home. That's a really lovely thought. For every item that you sell, do you still have that ritual and that prayer that you're?
Yeah, so I don't do, it's not anything that's super deep or, anything. I've had people question the name and they're like, are you praying over the pieces? But really, I just like, if I'm going to sell a piece to someone, I like to say a prayer for that person. And even whenever I would go and buy pieces from a person, my husband and I would stop in the car on the way away and just say a prayer for that person. So it's nothing too deep, and we don't like make them pray with us or anything like that, but it's just nice to think about it and put that little extra level of just faith into it.
Well, it's very thoughtful. And even if it's not appreciated by the customer, not everyone will, at least it's something that you're doing for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And it has started some really cool conversations, and I've had a lot of people say, "What's the name of it?" And I'll tell them, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." And they'll even say like, "Will you pray for a specific thing for me?" And so I thought I've had really cool interactions with that, and it's really neat.
What's something unexpected that you've experienced by intersecting your faith in your business? Because a lot of people would say, don't do that, right? Like keep them separate.
I think I have had a few challenges with it just because that's the name of my business. And so there's a few people who are like standoffish with it. And I've had, people say, why is it called that? And so like, I don't even think about it anymore because it's been called that for so long. And so it just kind of feels natural to me for my business to be called Prayed Over Pieces. But honestly, there hasn't been much of a downside of it. And so I was ready for people to be like, Prayed Over Pieces, we're not going to deal with that. But overall, people are very open to it.
And, it can be polarizing, especially in today's day and age, but polarizing at times can be good.
Yeah. And I make sure it's never a pushy thing, and I've never been like pushy at all, but I just kind of like to include that.
What are some of the flips that you've had that you remember most fondly, or maybe you made the most money on?
Some of the ones that I have remembered most fondly are ones that I have done for people who they actually brought it to me, and it was their families. So I've had furniture pieces brought to me that just look horrible, and they are their grandmother's buffet, and they were like, "We're going to have to sell it or give it away. We can't keep it unless you can do something to it." And so it made it so special to be able to refinish people's family pieces. I did have one piece where a lady, she said, "This piece is ugly. I don't want it. My family gave it to me. I'm going to give it to you." And I refinished it and posted it. And she said, "I want it back. I like it now." And so that was kind of a neat thing.
That's a cool flip. And I mean, how much did you make on that flip though?
At least hundreds and hundreds of dollars. She said, "I know that I gave it to you, but I want to pay you for it because it's beautiful now."
Absolutely. And that's a great feeling to get them to kind of take a second look.
Yeah. One of the cool things about sharing the process of refinishing pieces or flipping and DIYing is just letting people see sometimes how much work it is and the process, because a lot of times in this day and age, you just see a before and after, and they have no idea what went into it. And so you can actually say, "I sanded it down, I had to seal it, then I stained it." Then, there's so much that goes into it, and they get to actually see that process and understand why we're pricing it the way that we are.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's so important to educate the consumer because we live in our world. Everyone lives in their own world. And we don't intersect with or have that much knowledge about things that we're not involved in. And so I'll give maybe a couple examples. Right when Venmo came out, I was just like, yeah, this totally makes sense. And then when I got like a debit card that I could withdraw from an ATM from without a fee, I was like, yeah, this makes total sense, right? And I think the average consumer, these are just improvements in financial systems that just made total sense, and everyone thinks it should be free, but there is a cost to providing these kinds of services, and the people that engineered these new types of products were very creative in being able to provide that kind of solution. But it's not something that you'd understand unless you dove really deep to understand why does this have a cost. And there are a lot of things in life like that. Like even us with our sourcing software, we send you a notification whenever an item matching your criteria gets posted on a marketplace. And if it's a good deal, good deals tend to go fast. So it gives you a competitive advantage. And we price accordingly. Like we price according to our costs, but also the value that we think we bring to our customers. And a lot of people are like, well, this should be free. why does this cost anything, right? And there's like, well, we kind of had to build an entire company and product, and we hire people, and there's a lot that goes behind the scenes. Definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. Um, and bringing people into the process of creating is an incredible strategy for getting people to appreciate the value. I imagine that the average person on Facebook Marketplace versus someone who's been following your brand, like what they're willing to pay for the item or their perception of the value is quite different.
Yes, and that was why I kind of decreased how much I was doing on Marketplace because, if you think about even the memes about Marketplace, it's like, "Hey, it's a $500 item," and they're like, "Will you take $20?" So you just kind of have to find your group and who your customer is and really show your products to them. Yeah.
So you started with prayed over pieces, and nowadays it seems like you have more of a focus on the YouTube channel, the Flipper's Guide, giving more of a in-depth vlog style look at the process of creation. Where do you see your content creation heading, let's say over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I've just kind of transitioned it over the last few years. I moved out to the country, so that just really changed my business philosophy. I had to just change it as soon as we moved because it wasn't the same. And so I thought, I really think it would be fun to show people how to do this and to kind of add different things because I had done furniture for, since 2017. And so it just kind of, you kind of want to change it up a little bit after you've done it for a while. And I had people asking like, can you show me how to update my house and how to bring in items that will make it look nicer and so it just kind of naturally transitioned to that and I was able to use what I had and create the YouTube channel and be able to bring in income for that. But also, it really is just a fun way to show another skill that I have and ways that I can also update my home and show people how to update theirs with high end, affordable items.
Right, right. Yeah, I was seeing that on your channel, like more of a shift towards renovation and remodeling, and maybe, I don't know, we'll see you on HGTV one.
We'll see. I'm in if they want to call me.
It could be. So, Autumn, thank you so much for joining us on the Couch Pod today. We're almost at our time. For anyone that's been following along that wants to connect with you and support your journey, what's the best way for them to follow along?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is called The Flipper's Guide, and then I have Facebook and Instagram and TikTok a little bit, but that is Prayed Over Pieces. So, yep.
All right, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been another episode of the Couch Pod, and we look forward to having y'all